Is your home prepared for hurricane season? Don't wait till it's too late. Trust ServPro of Tampa Bay for expert care and helpful tips. Have a plan. Fill your gas tank, stock batteries, charge your phone, and take care of the pets. Call ServPro today and weather any storm with confidence.
Time, weather, and
always. How you doing, everybody? I'm Chief Meteorologist Dennis Phillips. Heat, still the hot topic of weather conversation, right? Just smashed the previous record for rainfall in Tampa. It's still a very nice day. We've got some clouds out there, even a couple of sprinkles as another front rolls through the area. Most of us wake up to sunshine and then very warm temperatures in the afternoon. Our temperatures, they're going up and they're staying up. Really nice forecast, especially if you're planning on going to the beach or the pool. Rain chances very slim. Another beautiful day in store. It's going to bring us a very high chance of storms. Some isolated showers across the area. Mother Nature likes to remind us that it isn't set by a calendar. We're always on it for you just in case things begin to pop.
Streaming from the ABC Action Weather Center in Studio A. This is Dennis Phillips Live Plus. Brought to you by ServPro, the #1 choice in cleanup and restoration.
How you doing, everybody? ABC Action News Chief Meteorologist Dennis Phillips, along with Kyle Burger here. We are doing DPL PLUS, which is a combination of weather, and today we're going to be talking Bucs, right? Yeah. So the training camp has started, right?
Day one is today, yes. So training camp now. So it's officially football season. We can officially start talking football.
Nice.
Fantasy football. It's here and staying for several months now.
We were just talking about that. I mean, I told Kyle, I'm like, look, this is just kind of hanging out. I mean, a lot of the folks here say it's like 1,000 people out with their lawn chairs out in the backyard just talking over each other and just talking. And I can't think of anything better to do than talk about football, which we're going to be talking about that coming up in a minute. But I do want to briefly talk a little bit about the storms that are going on out there, because there are some pretty decent storms. There's a live look outside with the radar. And yeah, I mean, you remember yesterday we were talking about St. Pete was one of the few spots that actually did not see a lot of rain. Well, today they did. And if you go back and look at the last 3 or 4 hours, you'll see they had some really heavy thunderstorms that blew on through. There were about 3,000 people without power. We posted some pictures of the lightning there, and there's more popping down to the south, moving into Manatee and also Hillsborough County. But the biggest area of rain right now is in Citrus and Hernando. Now, I'll tell you, this is not going to be as widespread as it was last night when, I mean, a solid 80% of us picked up some really nice rainfall totals. Lightning right now, about 800 strikes, actually close to 900 strikes, Citrus and Hernando in the last 10 or 15 minutes. So it's coming down pretty good. And then as you look across Pasco County, things have quieted down. That was after some really significant rains over the last hour. Watch this. I mean, we go back and look at that line that came through. Most of it was west of Zephyr Hills, although, you know, Dade City and Wesley Chapel had their fair share a couple of hours ago. But then as you kind of look down to the south, things are kind of quieter, at least compared to what we had last night at this time. So we're still looking at 2 main areas, this one here, Manatee and Hillsborough County, and the other one across our northern counties. And if you look at Futurecast, we'll go ahead and look at the high resolution Futurecast. This takes us from now until, and it's pretty bullish on the rain really at this point. I mean, I think it's overdoing it a little bit. But look, by about 9:30, 10 o'clock, the rain's still lingering, and even overnight there might be a few showers. But the one thing I want to mention, and we've talked a little bit about this with the tropics, is that there's some Saharan dust out there. And I know a lot of people have had their fair share of Saharan dust, especially allergy sufferers, making it a little tricky. But what it will be doing over the next few days is increasing a little bit. So what that's going to do, and you can kind of see there it is, moving through the islands and eventually into Florida, that's going to kind of squash the chances of our rain over the next 3 or 4 days. Now, we're still going to have the same wind, all right? So we're still looking at a southeast to northwest wind field. So that means the timing is still the same. Late day, early evening stuff is on the way. No changes there. But you also begin to notice that this area in the central Atlantic begins to weaken a little bit. You don't see quite as dense dust, and then you also see this starting to lift off to the north, right? Look at this last plume, more of a northerly component. That is what typically happens in the tropics this time of the year. This starts to move north, and when it does, we start to see the tropics light up. And yes, the Euro is looking at the possibility of some development maybe in the next 7 to 10 days down in the islands. I'm certainly not sold on that by any stretch of the imagination. But you know what? There's a lot of waves out there. I mean, while officially the Hurricane Center is saying nothing's expected over the next 7 days, you've got 1, you've got 2, you've got 3, you've got 4, you've got a bigger one coming off of Africa. So certainly the wave train, as we call it, is getting ready to come off in this direction. And when it does, when that dust starts to move northward, we are going to start to see development. There's just no way around it. I mean, I've been talking about people about this for the last couple of days. There's just no way around it. It is going to start to develop. But at this point, we are still looking good, all right? So again, one last look at the radar. No warnings going on right now. Overall, lightning strikes. Let's check how many are going on in the entire area. I'm pretty solid. I mean, from Citrus County down to Manatee County, 1,100 lightning strikes in the last 15 minutes. So let's don't minimize that, but at least at this point, we're not looking quite at the widespread coverage that we have had of late. Let's do some hellos here. Let's jump back in and see who we have here. We've got some of our folks who are long timers, have been here for a long time. Hopefully we're going to get some folks here who are interested in the Bucs and training camp. So, you know, Kyle, do you want me to play this, your package that you did earlier on now?
Let's start with that. Then
okay.
ask questions. I can ask questions. Then we can get into the nuts and bolts of it.
Okay, good. So here's a look at how day one training camp started out.
It's day one of training camp, and this is where it all begins. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers work to make the playoffs for a 5th straight season, but this team wants more than just a division title.
Nobody wants to shoot for just a division title. That doesn't do anything for us. We're in this to win the big thing.
Super Bowl, that's the goal. And, you know, we got a lot of the players back. You know, we got some young guys that are good, that are filling some roles that we need. And, you know, I feel good about this season, and I definitely feel better than I did last year.
Coming off a 3rd straight NFC South Division title and a playoff win, the team is expecting more in year 2 of quarterback Baker Mayfield under center.
Well, Baker has the keys to the bus, and he's driving it, and he's comfortable. We're comfortable with him.
Mayfield's top target, Mike Evans, enters his 11th season with the Bucs and is looking to extend his NFL record to 11 consecutive seasons of 1,000 yards receiving.
Last year, we heard all the talk about us we lost Tom, we were going to be trash and things like that. But we knew the caliber of players that we had, and this year we're going to be better, I feel like. I mean, it's already showing. I know it's just day one, but OTAs, it was different than it was the year before. Like, we know Baker's going to be the guy. Last year we didn't know that preparing. So it's a lot more continuity.
The biggest roster question mark on day one would be if offensive tackle Tristan Wirfs would participate, and we got our answer. Wirfs was on the field and going through drills with his teammates. Wirfs has been playing it safe this offseason to avoid serious injury while he awaits a long-term contract. In Tampa, Kyle Burger, ABC Action News.
So, you know, looking at Mike Evans and looking at some of the other guys, it seems like they've got an expectation this year that maybe they didn't have last year. You think that's the case?
Yeah, as Mike mentioned there, like when they lose Tom Brady, you think the team's just going to go to trash. But Baker Mayfield came in and proved that that he can play. And he came in on a 1-year deal, $4 million contract, and he earned it. I think he liked that quarterback competition last year, but now he signed a new contract. It's 3 years, $100 million. So now he has a new challenge, a new chip on his shoulder to live up to that contract that he got. So I think that's his new challenge. He's a guy that always carries a chip on his shoulder from high school to college and now in the NFL. And he's really proved that he earned that contract. And he's coming off a season where he had career highs in completion percentage, passing yards, and 28 touchdowns last season. He actually threw one more touchdown than the Super Bowl MVP, Patrick Mahomes, last year.
Wow.
But he had a good year.
Well, and by the way, if you have any questions for Kyle, just go ahead and throw them on here. I'll keep an eye out. I'm definitely looking at the rain and the storms. No warnings going on right now. But so we were talking about this. So, okay, there's these expectations. And yet, you know, in their division, the Falcons definitely made some upgrades as well. And a matter of fact, the Falcons are the favorite to win the division. The Bucs are the second choice. Falcons, I think, are minus 120. The Bucs are plus 220, 240. In other words, they're the second choice. But One thing I thought was interesting is we were just looking at this. The overall Vegas prediction wins is 7.5, which seems pretty low for a team that made the playoffs. Do you think the schedule might have something to do with that?
I think that's very low for a team that made the playoffs. I mean, they were low-balled last year with like a 6.5, 7 wins, and they won 9 games last year. This year, yeah, the schedule is going to be super tough. Since when you win the division, you play a first-place schedule, they like to say. So I think you play all the first-place teams in each division. So I'm looking at the schedule now. Their first-place schedule, it is brutal from weeks 7 to week 10. They play the Ravens. Then they play the Falcons, who are the favorite in the South. Then they go to Kansas City, then the San Francisco 49ers.
Yikes.
So that is a brutal stretch. If they can survive that, they'll be okay. But other than that, they get that tough stretch out kind of early, and then they have a bye week, which will help. Last year they had an early bye week, so the late bye week will help this year. But 7.5, I'm taking the over win total all day.
Over.
Yeah, give me 10 or 11 wins for the Bucs this year.
And by the way, Sammy just mentioned that the Creamsicles are returning in October against Atlanta. And one of our producers, Caitlin, was even mentioning that as well. So I mean, that's going to be a fun thing.
Yeah, they're never really good in those Creamsicles.
That's a good point too.
Last year's bad game against Detroit. Maybe, they're playing the Falcons. It's a big rival game. Probably the top 2 teams in the division. Maybe this will fire up the fan base, fire up the players to have a little extra juice for that game. It's going to be a big one, in division against the big rival.
So my question is, Mike Evans, big contract. That was something that was a question mark. I mean, there was a lot of talk that he might go elsewhere. And so you've got Mike Evans getting up there a little bit in age. You've got Chris Godwin, Penn Stater, who has been having some injury problems here and there. So your number 1 and your number 2 wide receivers, as well as who they pick up in the draft. They picked up
Jalen McMillan. He could be the number 3, maybe replacing Trey Palmer as the number 3.
Mm-hmm. And so, are there any concerns about the fact that you got Rachaad White, who obviously had a really great year for fantasy as well last year. I mean, just an amazing year. Do you expect they continue to show improvements with Rachaad? Is there going to be a different scheme? Are they going to be using him any differently, or are they just going to pretty much follow with what they were working well with last year?
Well, running game and working well does not go well with the Bucs. They've had the worst running game in the past 2 seasons, and new OC Liam Combs hoping to change that with more variety in the running game. But Rachaad White, what he does best is that he can come out of the backfield and make catches. So he was just shy of 1,000 rushing yards last year. I think he ended up with close to 1,600 total yards with his receiving yards, 9 touchdowns. But it's going to be him, RB1 in the backfield for the Buccaneers. They also drafted Bucky McMillan out of Oregon, who he plays very similar style as Rachaad White. He can run the ball and come out of the backfield. So it's a good little compliment to Rachaad White, but it's going to be a Rachaad White show in the backfield.
Well, and from a fantasy perspective, that's awesome, because if you're playing, and I know there are some people out there watching with fantasy, I think Rachaad White was the number 4 running back in fantasy last year in a PPR, points per reception. You get a point for every time you receive the ball, because like you said, and they're throwing him out in the flat all the time, and the guy is getting a point every single time. So from a fantasy perspective, and by the way, we're talking about this, you have been very successful in your fantasy leagues of late, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, I think I'm in 2 leagues, and not last year. It was kind of down year last year, but the year before I won both leagues, so it was a nice little payday.
Yeah, well, we have one here at the station. I did not do well last year whatsoever, but we're hopeful. And it always seems like Bucs players are drafted a little bit higher, maybe than where their ADP is, or average draft position, because they're fans. So, we've got a lot of fans here right across the street from the stadium.
Well, Mike Evans was kind of lowballed a little bit last year, new quarterback, getting up there, but then he had a huge year, 13 touchdowns, tied for the league lead with Tyreek Hill. He'll be drafted very high, I think, this year. I think you might be able to get Chris Godwin at a discount because he had such a terrible year last year, very few touchdowns, but he might be a sneaky guy to get in a PPR league because Liam Combs, the new AC, is moving him back to the slot. They had him out wide last year. That's not his strength.
He loves playing in the slot.
He loves the slot, so look for a lot of catches for Chris Godwin this year.
What about the defense?
Defense should be good. I think the defense improved and the offense improved over in this offseason. So the defense, I would say addition by subtraction. You lose Devin White, you lose Carlton Davis. Carlton Davis, Bucs traded him to the Lions for a 3rd-round draft pick. He's injury-prone the last few years. He's been here forever. You think you lose your top cornerback, but Zion McCollum, who's in his 2nd year, has done a pretty good job. He'll be filling in, and you lose Devin White, he was a top 5 draft pick a few years ago, and he just underproduction the last few years. He was great the Super Bowl year, but poor attitude, underproduction. He got benched later in the year, and KJ Britt out of Auburn came in and stepped in immediate leadership. So the defense, I think, has improved as well. So I think good defense, good offense, which will make the offense better, give the offense some more opportunity.
Well, that was my other question, because the O-line had a lot of injuries last year, and then we had retirements and whatnot. So how is that shaping up? I mean, I get it. And that's got to be the biggest fear, because it happened last year in training camp too. You lose some O-line guys to injuries, and they're just already in a hole, which happened last year with their center, I believe it was.
We had 2 seasons ago. Yeah, Ryan.
Was it 2 years ago?
Ryan Jensen. Yeah, Ryan Jensen. The first day of training camp. Yeah.
It's
and
craziness.
Career.
So how's it looking now?
Well, they drafted a new center this year, their first-round draft pick, Graham Barton out of Duke. He didn't play a lot of center in college, but they think he can transition really well to center. He's a very smart kid. Everyone's talking his praises.
He went to Duke. He better be.
He went to Duke, yes. So he's a very smart kid. Cody Mauch should improve. Luke Gedicke made such huge strides last year. So as long as his offensive line is intact and good, Baker's going to have an even better season. Give him more time to throw. I mean, it all starts at the O-line. Everyone knows the trenches are where it all begins. So it's a better unit this year.
I want to mention here, so in some of the comments, so Bridget, when I was talking about Chris Godwin or Mike getting a little long in the tooth, she's like, come on, focus on the positive. Little you might not know this, Bridget was a Bucs cheerleader. Maybe 10 years ago, I can't remember when, but so we definitely have some big Bucs fans here. But they're going up against the Falcons, who really made some improvements to their team this year. Would you say that, in your perspective, that the Bucs are second choice to the Falcons based on, I mean, Vegas thinks that way. Vegas has the Falcons as a $1.20 favorite, and the Bucs are plus 220, the second choice. What about the rest of the division? I mean, how's it looking?
I think it's Bucs Falcons. I mean, Panthers are still rebuilding. Dave Canales, the Bucs OC from last season, he's now the head coach. They took a gamble on signing Canales, so that's 1 year of an OC, already head coach, is incredible. They still have the very young quarterback, Bryce Young, to work with. The Panthers are still, I think they're still in the bottom of this division. Saints, it's Falcons Bucs, and I still don't understand why Vegas has the Falcons over the Bucs. I grew up in Atlanta. I was a Falcons fan, and I'm still saying the Bucs are the better team.
There's just so much buzz with the Falcons. You've got obviously with Kirk Cousins there. I think, and obviously new coaching staff as well. I think a lot of people who are into fantasy football have been waiting for Kyle Pitts to turn around.
And Bijan Robinson, too, should have a huge year.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think there's just, that's kind of a team that there seems to be a lot of buzz about. And with Cousins, obviously, I mean, but boy, we were talking about this earlier. What an interesting pickup with Lennox. You know, I mean, that's just, I think there's a lot of people scratching their heads that the Falcons used a top 10 pick on a quarterback after just signing Kirk Cousins to a $100 million contract or whatever it was.
Yeah, you said that the Falcons had did a lot of improvements this year. They could have been even better if they did not spend a top 10 pick on Michael Penix Jr., who I love. Michael Penix Jr. by the way.
Local guy.
Local kid, great quarterback. This is the fit for him. I mean, if Cousins goes down early with a devastating injury, then it's a good pick because Penix is the most NFL-ready quarterback out of the draft. But like you said, he just signed Cousins to a long-term deal, which means Penix might not see the field for 2 to 3 seasons, and this could be another situation like we had Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre years ago, Aaron Rodgers and Jordan Love more recently, sitting behind a veteran. I mean, he could be good in a few years, but he's ready to play now.
Yeah. So overall, what was your vibe? And by the way, we're going to get back to weather. This is, as you see behind me, this is DPL Plus. This isn't just weather. Over the next, well, now, I mean, almost every week, we're going to be having different reporters, different anchors talking about different things within the community. And obviously today, the first day of Bucs training camp, there's a lot of expectations. I guess that's the thing that from the fan base. But did you get that same vibe in the locker room? Did you get that same vibe out on the field? I mean, did you really? I mean, every year everybody's going to think, all right, it's the beginning of the season. I'm sure the Jets are feeling the same way, you know, with Aaron Rodgers back. But do you believe what it is that you're hearing over there? Do you really think that?
I believe it.
Yeah?
I believe it. Yeah. The team is fired up. Coach Bowles, the team's won 3 straight division titles, and Bowles flat out said it, that's not enough. We have Super Bowl aspirations. Antoine Winfield Jr. said the same thing. Division title, making the playoffs, they've done it. They're going for 5 straight playoff appearances, which is, absurd if you're a longtime Bucs fan, because between 2008 and 2019, they didn't sniff the playoffs.
Yeah.
And now they're going for 5 straight. So this team has been building for something good. And it all started with Tom Brady coming in here and rechanging just the atmosphere in the locker room, in the clubhouse, and within this community. This can be a winning franchise. And you're still seeing that because Antoine Winfield Jr. was a rookie with Brady, and you're kind of carrying that. You've seen that leadership carry over.
Well, if you believe in the team, we were just looking at this. We were glancing at what the odds are for all the different teams. And the Bucs to win the Super Bowl are anywhere between plus 7,500 and plus 8,000. So that means a $100 bet. You would win $8,000 if they were to win the Super Bowl.
That's a fun bet.
So I mean, you got the whole season to root for them if they make it into the playoffs. So real quick, I'm gonna take a quick look at radar because some folks are asking and they're kind of coming in and out. So there's a look at, and who is it? Someone just said there's a big black cloud coming at them. So Becky, tell me where you live. Because you say, if you live actually, you know what? I'm going to guess where you live. You might live in Sun City Center or Ruskin or Apollo Beach. That's a possibility because there are plenty of big black clouds coming in from that direction. And if you look over the last half hour or so, watch what's happening. It is definitely moving your way, moving up toward the north. Eventually, I think this is actually going to make it into Fishhawk, Riverview, Brandon, Valrico area. And eventually, this is going to make it into Tampa. So the area that we're looking at right here is definitely headed towards South Tampa and downtown. It may actually clip southeastern Pinellas as well. So that's one area we're looking at. And of course, still going on in Citrus County. This is some pretty heavy rain, quite a bit of lightning as well. No warnings. And we'll continue to track this, and I'll be updating on social as well. But I did want to give you, it was Ruskin. Becky, that's what I thought. So, you definitely could see it coming in there. And Vivian's saying pretty bad in South Brooksville right now. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. Actually, it looks like the worst of that is just about to move through Brooksville. In fact, it already has moved through Brooksville. There you are right there. Whereas the worst of it is in Citrus County. So I just wanted to give you an update on that. Let's go on back, Kyle, and pick up where we left off. So what about anything that's popping as we go? What is the time frame for training camp? Like, how does that go from, they don't do 2-a-days anymore. They stopped doing 2 days a long time ago.
Okay, so yeah, today's the first practice. Rookies reported on Monday. Veterans reported yesterday. So it was shorts and helmets today, shorts and helmets tomorrow. And then day 5 will be the first day in full pads. So what we got, that's midweek next week will be day 5 of practice, maybe Monday. They practice Saturday, off Sunday. So, okay, day 5, first day in full pads. So that's when we're going to see some hitting. And speaking of that, Tristan Wirfs is another story I guess we need to talk about because he is going to be playing under his 5th-year rookie deal, and he will be, next year he needs to get paid, and he's hoping to get paid sooner than later because he will be the highest paid offensive lineman in the league. He is by far the Bucs' best player. He did a hold-in during OTAs, voluntary workouts, because you don't want to risk him getting hurt. So it's kind of because we saw with Ryan Jensen a couple years ago, and that really kind of...
Well, and he doesn't want to risk getting hurt either.
No,
that's the big thing if he's about to get a payday.
Yeah, I don't blame him for sitting out, but he's such a great teammate. He showed up today, and it was still shorts and T-shirts. So he showed up today, went through all the drills. I'm curious to see if he'll get a deal done before day 5 in full pads because... You want him locked up. Even Mike Evans said today, we can't lose this guy. He is our best player on this team. So they need to lock him up. But he was the biggest question mark if he would show up and how much work he would put in. And they had 90 players report today. One player did not show up, Randy Gregory, who they just signed in the offseason from the Denver Broncos. He missed all of OTAs, missed all the offseason workouts. He's dealing with some lawsuit with the NFL and the Denver Broncos. And he's now on the reserve list. So Todd Bowles did not want to talk about him.
Yeah, today. I believe it.
There's something going on there.
By the way, Sammy just mentioned, so we were talking about 2-a-days. In other words, 2 practices a day. And the collective bargaining agreement, I think, ended that years and years ago. But Sammy is saying, believe it or not, Ray Perkins used to do 3-a-days when he was head coach of the Bucs. Back, I'm guessing that would be in the 70s, maybe the mid to late 70s, or maybe the Stone Age for that matter, because that's just stuff that doesn't happen these days. But obviously, that's got to be the biggest concern is keeping these guys healthy, getting in through training camp, because that's the key to everything.
Well, I know you know how hot it was out there. Luckily, you saw the story I did. I mean, you probably smelled of sweat and sunscreen, so Yeah, it's brutal out there, and it just gets worse. I mean, we started at 8:30 this morning, so it was not as bad. It's still muggy and humid, but
yeah.
They did a 90 minutes today, and they increased 15 minutes the next few days until they get to a 120-minute, 2-hour practice.
Now, do they do indoors and outdoors, or do they?
They only do. They'll do indoors if it's raining.
Okay, really, but in the heat, they'll always do outdoors.
Oh, yeah.
And you got to figure I think the mentality might be it's going to give them a little bit of an advantage for a team coming in from up north who aren't used to the heat. Maybe in the fourth quarter, they might have a little more stamina for something.
Yeah, especially in these early games in September, because they've got so many September games at 1 o'clock. And if you're a fan, hats off to you for going to a game at 1 o'clock in September.
Yeah.
So that could be the advantage there. And typically during the season, when they have a road game and you know you're playing on the road in a dome, they will have those practices at the indoor facility to get the team ready to play on the turf.
By the way, Sammy said that Perkins was there 87-91 and got fired with 3 games left in the 91 season. Sammy is a big Bucs fan. So what about the preseason games? So that's something else. Let's say somebody wants to go, because if you have a tough time affording or getting tickets to the games, it's a lot easier to get preseason tickets, James, I would assume, yes?
Yeah, let's look at the preseason schedule. I know they have a practice with Jacksonville. Mm-hmm. So they're at Cincinnati, at Jacksonville, and Miami comes here. So those are your 3 games. You know, the first 2 weeks, first 2 practice games, exhibition games, it's going to be mostly the backups. You'll see Kyle Trask, you see Wolford in at quarterback. And then Friday, August 23rd, Miami here at Ray J. That's when we'll see Mike Evans, Baker Mayfield, for the first quarter, maybe Baker Mayfield the first couple drives.
Because they don't want to take a chance of injury, right?
No, you don't.
Hey, real quick, Anna Maria has a non-football question for you. With the Rays and Marlins having the most dismal attendance of MLB, would you consider Florida more of a spring training and minor league state or a major league state? I mean, it's a totally different take, but she did ask you.
Let's see. The Rays, the attendance issue, that's a whole other can of worms.
I will tell you, Anna Maria is a big Yankees fan, so she's biased against them right off the bat in the first place, but nevertheless.
It is, Tampa anyway, it is an MLB city, Tampa Bay. I mean, fans may not show up to the games, but the games on TV, I think Tampa Bay has the 13th highest most watched on Bally Sports. If we can say Bally Sports on this network?
Yeah.
Oh, sure. We can. So, yeah, people watch the games. It's just getting to the games is the difficult part.
And that's an interesting predicament now, because now that the new stadium has pretty much been approved, it's staying in St. Pete, which is making a lot of folks in St. Pete thrilled that they're keeping the team. But you're still running into the same issues that you've got people in Lakeland or people in other parts of Polk County, that it's a really super long drive to get there, and we don't have mass transit. I mean, that's the one thing I think a lot of folks don't think about. These major cities that have a ton of attendance issues, they've all got mass transit. They all have a way to get to the games very easily, and it's just a lot tougher for Floridians to do so. But nevertheless, that was something I wanted to throw out there.
You see where St. Pete is. I mean, population-wise, whoa. You're surrounded by water. Most of the population in there is fish. So if you put it over here, you have a lot more chances of people to go to the games. But I'm in West Chase, and it takes me 45 minutes to get to the Trop.
And again, a lot of the bigger cities, you'll take the subway or you'll take the metro or whatever to get there. So it is a difficult thing. And I will be honest, I'm kind of surprised that it played out the way it did. I figured eventually it would get done in Tampa or East, where Orlando could maybe even get in the mix as well. But St. Pete stepped up. They did what they needed to do, and now they're going to have a new stadium seating 30,000 people, and it's going to be, I think, 28. Is that when it's supposed to be done?
Yeah, the contract or the lease with the Trop is 27, so 28's got to be done. And the first thing they'll probably build will be a parking structure, because while you're doing that construction, you need somewhere for people to park while all that's happening. So I'm just happy they're not leaving.
You and me both.
I think it's not Montreal, not Nashville, Portland, or wherever else they want to talk about.
Yeah, one of my sons was named after one of their original draft choices. And if you go to the Trop and you look on the right side in the rotunda, you'll see Shea Phillips' baby Ray. He was 6 months old. He's now 26 years old. And he was one of the original Devil Rays Wall of Fame inductees back in the day. So we've always been a big Rays fan. Adam's saying 2 inches of rain in Carrollwood today. Anna Maria, thank you for your response, Kyle. Sammy says the fairgrounds would have been ideal. I've kind of always thought that at least in terms of centrally located. But again, St. Pete stepped up. So we only have about 30 seconds left in the streamers. We will continue on Facebook. We were talking about this, through the season. Kyle's certainly going to stop by, and I think we're going to plan on a fantasy football free-for-all one night where it's just all about questions. And I think as we get closer to September, when the drafts happen, I think that's when we're gonna shoot for that. So Kyle, thank you very much. Appreciate you stopping by. Again, we're gonna continue on Facebook for the streamers. Thanks for watching. Have a great night, and we'll see you on tomorrow's edition of Dennis Phillips Live. Okay, so the streamers are gone. We've still got Facebook coming up here. So is there anything that you noticed in terms of the practices, or just talking to the folks, maybe what their bigger concerns are, either on offense or on defense, or things that they feel like this might be the tipping point for us, that we're going to either succeed or not succeed based on these areas?
Well, defensively, Antoine Winfield Jr. mentioned the team's much faster on defense
than it was before.
Yeah, and this is a top 10 scoring defense last year, giving up 19.5 points per game. And if this is a faster defense, I mean, it's going to be fun to watch. We have like maybe Joe Tryon, Shorinka can get to the quarterback more. Vita Vea lost a lot of weight, so he's a lot faster. But Bowles also mentioned this year getting sacks is not enough, which sacks are great. He says we want more turnovers. So they're going to focus on using that speed, that rush to create more interceptions, pulling the ball away.
That's always a tough thing to handicap, whether turnovers are, because turnovers are probably the most important thing in all of football. I mean, in terms of, whether you're plus or minus. And I always wonder, I know it's great to watch them because you see them now. Those guys don't just tackle the guy. They go for the ball. Yeah. And that's a skill that I don't ever really remember back in the days seeing very often. I mean, it is such a huge part of the game these days.
And I think Antoine Winfield Jr. is probably the best at that. And I remember last year's couple games, basically he saved the Bucs season in 2 games against the Falcons, against the Panthers. I remember that one against the Panthers. I think it was Bryce Young who was going for the touchdown, about to dive in for the end zone, and Winfield comes right behind him and punches the ball out through the end zone, which creates a touchback, so the Bucs get the ball. So that was a postseason saving play. And
that's just not luck. That is something they drill. That's something they work on, right?
He says he protects every blade of the grass on the field. That's his mentality.
That is awesome. Well, let me see. We got anything else here? Well, and there's questions. I mean, I think a head coach position in the NFL is probably one of the most thankless positions there is, because if they're winning, I think maybe sometimes the head coach sometimes gets too much credit when they win and too much blame when they don't win. I mean, that's kind of my take on stuff. I mean, because you've got all your assistant coaches. I mean, granted, but then again, you can make the argument, like anything, the boss at the top, takes the credit or the fall if things don't go well. Now, how would you say they were feeling about the way their draft played out and the general manager in general? Because obviously, as you said, how many years in a row in the playoffs?
4 straight years in the playoffs. They've won the division 3 years in a row. In the year they won the Super Bowl, they were the wild card that year. But then,
now, how much of that do you attribute to Tom Brady? At least for a couple of years, obviously. But at the end of the day, I think that was a huge turnaround, because prior to Tom Brady being there, I mean,
08 to 2019, no playoffs, yeah.
Yeah, the team was floundering.
Yeah,
so
I mean, even that, the 2020 year, they did win the wild card to get in, and basically went on the road every game that postseason before coming home for the Super Bowl. So yeah, me and Kevin, that was a fun off season, or postseason rather, I should say. Yeah, it was the wild card round in DC. Then we went to New Orleans. Then we went to Green Bay for the NFC Championship, and of course we came back home for the home Raymond James Stadium Super Bowl. But then the next year, I don't know if you can give Brady credit for the next year making the playoffs. They finished 8-9, I believe, and won the division. Was that year? Was this a really down year?
That was a rough year.
Yeah,
it certainly was.
And they actually had a better team, I thought, that year.
Well, the expectations were certainly higher.
Yeah, the expectations were higher. And that was the year when they played the Rams in the second round of the playoffs here.
Oh, yeah.
No, that was the 11-5. I knew. That was the 11-5 year. That was his.
When they.
Second year was 11-5. Brady's third year was the 8-9.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Samuel, correct us if that's not right, because he's all over that. By the way, someone else just mentioned something I thought was interesting. I can't remember. Anyway, I have not. By the way, Caitlin, I have not seen anything from the Weather Service about any kind of a tornado in Brooksville. What often happens with these thunderstorms is you get downbursts, you get winds that come down and spread out, but quite often they can be 60, 65 mile-an-hour winds, which, is every bit as strong as an AF0 tornado. So I have not heard anything else about that. So Bridget's saying first round Rams. So, and Bridget follows that teams really closely too. So maybe that was it. So, but anyway, bottom line, it's a good start. I mean, certainly it sounds like the way that you're talking is would you say there is more expectations and more positivity this year compared to last year?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, yeah, because we didn't know what to expect from the Bucs last year. You lose Tom Brady, you bring in Baker Mayfield, who is the first quarterback in NFL history to play for 4 teams in 2 calendar years. He just gets passed up, cut. Bucs take a chance on him. He was the guy I wanted, actually. It was like Gardner Minshew was in the conversation. There's a couple other guys, but Baker was the kind of guy I wanted because I remember I covered him in college. I worked in Birmingham and covered Alabama, so the Oklahoma connection, I saw him play. He's just a tough kid, and I love watching him play, and he just kind of got done wrong by the Browns, I thought.
I did too. I mean, I think about in Cleveland how popular he was. I mean, he was doing those commercials, for heaven's sakes, that were hysterical, and they were really good commercials. And I just kind of figured he was becoming a part of that community. And then all of a sudden, just like you said, they did him wrong.
Yeah, he had a shoulder injury, and then they kind of threw him back out there playing hurt. And then they, was it Deshaun Watson they signed?
And he hasn't done anything either. I mean, he's had injury problems. So, well, speaking of that, we will be talking, coming up in the next few weeks, we're going to be doing some fantasy football conversations. And I know nowadays, I mean, every year it gets bigger and bigger. And of course, now that sports betting is legal in Florida, I mean, there's conversations to be had on that as well. So thanks for stopping by. I appreciate it. I will give one last look at radar just to see what's going on out there. Kyle, thank you very, very much for
anytime.
For stopping by. And I'm sure we will see you through the season as we hopefully have another playoff run. So there's the rain and the storms moving through Citrus County. This area still moving in. It's going to make it into Pinellas. I do think it'll start to weaken a little bit as it approaches St. Pete because they've already had that rain earlier on, and that has a tendency to kind of zap the atmosphere of anything, of the energy, once it's already moved through once. So not nearly as active as it was last night, and I think that trend kind of continues as we head into the weekend, where rain coverage will be down to about maybe 50 or 60%. So thanks for stopping by. I appreciate it. Tomorrow night, we will be back with DPL. We'll be talking more about tropics. We'll be talking more about the rain and probably some in-depth look at the tropical season because I really think we're going to be pulling some 12-hour shifts more than likely as we get into the latter half of August, but probably even more so into September. It's going to get active. I just think it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Have a great night, and we will see you on tomorrow night's edition of Dennis Phillips Live. Night, guys.